Okay, we are live. Hi, this is William Ramsey. Welcome to William Ramsey Investigates. On today's show, I have a very special guest. His name is Adam Finnegan. And if you're watching this on Rumble, Twitter, or Rockman, you'll see the cover of his book. The full title is The Sleeper Agent, The Rise of Lyme Disease, Chronic Illness, and the Great Imitator Antigens of Biological Warfare. His last name is spelled Finnegan. He does have a website, and the full website is thesleeperagent.com. So I will pull that up, and it has tons of extra additional information in this very well-written book. I learned a lot. I've known a little bit about Lyme, and you can kind of go into the details about that and the strange people who are involved, the Russian biological warfare experts who we were talking in the pre-show. One of them was interviewed by Tommy of Tommy's podcast, Ken Alabek, one of the guys who left the Soviet Union. But there's a lot of information here and a lot of history. It's a great history book. An aspect of this book too is its history of what's leading up to today. But Adam Finnegan can talk more about that. So Adam, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Yep, this is my book, The Sleeper Agent. It took me about 6 years. And I got involved in all this because I ended up getting sick. My mother had Lyme disease, so I was very familiar with it. And I had read a book years ago called Lab 257 about Plum Island. And that was a big inspiration. And that was the first book that really got the name Eric Traub out in the public. A lot of people associated with Plum Island. And he did work there. And so I was really interested in that. I had read the book and stuff, but then later when I got sick, it was just something in me. I was like, I tried to get help, right? Like I tried to get help from the medical system and they were of no help. They said, oh, you don't have anything and we don't see anything wrong with you. My head felt like it was caving in, but the scan showed nothing. The lab, the blood work comes back normal and they say, you're not sick. So it was one of those kinds of things. And I was like, it inspired me to figure out, why does this happen? Why is this, because this is ridiculous. And so I started to look into all of this stuff. And I learned, I wanted to find more about Eric Traub. And I had befriended and joined a Lyme disease, support group. It was a group called Truth Cures. And it was from a woman who used to work at Pfizer as a chem analyst, and she taught us all about the outer surface proteins on Lyme disease spirochete, which is like a little worm almost. It causes Lyme disease. Borrelia burgdorferi is called, and but it's the little spike proteins on the outer surface that are really what do the damage and what make you really, really sick, because they shed these things called blebs all into your bloodstream, little toxic like fungal proteins, and make you really sick. And so they also, use that as the vaccine, and both of those, the vaccine would also bring on this horrible chronic disease. And that's why I called if you noticed in the subtitle, the Great Imitator Antigen. So an antigen is like the spike protein or an outer surface protein on either a virus or bacteria, and so these are like the weapon. Like that was Eric Traub's weapon, was that little antigen that had put on all of these different agents that would cause these slow chronic diseases. Now, people may wonder what would be the purpose of bioweapons that don't kill, but slowly incubate. Well, the point is, it's a long-term strategy. These are called strategic bioweapons, and it's to tire and exhaust. And if you think about it long-term, it actually makes a lot more sense, because you're overwhelming the enemy slowly, and it happens like when it gets rolling, and then, keeping people alive but unable to work strains not only the economy, the public health system gets overwhelmed. And that's exactly what is happening right now. And then another thing, so these weapons kind of target the immune system. to cause these slow chronic diseases. And I had learned about this condition, and it's actually a condition that you get, that a lot of people get with Lyme disease. It's called immune tolerance. And this is something that Eric Traub had discovered, but I had learned about it from this Pfizer whistleblower. She said it's basically, chronic immunosuppression, or your chronic immune deficiency. And
so it's kind of like an AIDS. It's like almost like an AIDS-like condition without maybe.
Yeah, sort of like that, right? I mean, AIDS is like a little different, but it produces this slow chronic disease, and reactivation of latent viruses is a big thing. Your immune system goes down, and then these sleeping viruses that are already in you reactivate. And a lot of those sleeping viruses came in through like other things like vaccines, like the polio vaccine with the SV40 and all that stuff. Like, so there's all sorts of, some people think that a lot of the herpes viruses like EBV and the other ones actually came in through, animal tissues that we used. That's quite possible, but these reactivate and they create the bulk of that chronic disease. Like all of these reactivated viruses, you still get the spirochete infection with Lyme disease, right? But you activate all of these other infections that kind of co-infect, and your immune system just cannot keep up. So you're just slowly worn out, tired. And another thing that happens is that it affects the brain. So a lot of people you will see psychiatric manifestations, or you'll see just people kind of, I don't know, you could almost describe it like rabies. Like people are just kind of like, out of their minds and stuff. And this is what I call a neurotropic effect of this immune tolerance. So,
and it's kind of like, for people who don't know, where is Plum Island and why did Lyme disease get its name Lyme?
Yeah. So this is, even though the book covers so much more, the Lyme disease was kind of at the center too. So Eric Traub, he was the German virologist who discovered this immune tolerance thing. But he also, I have him with the spirochetes that were used to make Lyme disease. And it was from a bird strain of Lyme disease, or Borrelia. It was given to his student. He had a guy under him while he went back. So he started at the Rockefeller Institute in the 30s, right? And he learned about how he could reactivate viruses from the inside. That was like his time at the Rockefeller Institute. He would inject an antigen or foreign protein into a mouse's brain and reactivate this latent virus, which came to be known as LCM virus. And that was like his big discovery. And his big discovery also included how it would destroy the immune system, basically, and he would see this slow chronic disease playing out. And so he, right before the war, he went back to Germany, right? And he started focusing on producing weapons or bioweapons that would produce this slow chronic disease. And he also noted that it would also produce cancer. Right? So he could get the cancer rate up to 50% in a lot of his mouse studies. All right. And I say that in the book. He was talking about it at the end, but so there's three things that happen with this immune tolerance: there's chronic disease, neuropsychiatric disorders or neurological disorders, and cancer. I call that the dark triad of immune tolerance. And so this was something that was very destructive, but it was very stealth, right?
And that's an aspect of this whole thing. So like even he's operating under these things like, American agriculture thing. Like they don't say bioweapon. They never use the words gain of function or anything.
That's another very important point. They never make that mistake. And this had to do with because Germany used bioweapons and chemical weapons in the First World War. And so they got sanctioned by the League of Nations, told them they couldn't have an army, all this stuff. So after that, every country was a lot more careful, and they would always hide their biological weapons work under benign research. And that was something that everybody did. You will never see somebody talking about a bioweapon as a bioweapon. They just would not do that. And so that's like part of
the
whole
mystery,
game.
right? The whole mystery
Yes.
of yeah.
It's a very esoteric war. Like it's just
it's almost like an occult war, as strange as that word is within the
I mean, I think you're right. You know, if you look, you could look at it like that. But you know, it was something, and long before genetic engineering technology came around, Eric Traub had a very, you know, he had a set way of doing it. It was through different animals. This is all in the published work. Like, so different animals, he could run a disease through different animals certain number of times, and it would mutate in certain ways. And so he put it in another animal. Like, for example, when he would run things through mice, it would always become more neurotropic to humans. Like, so it would affect the central nervous system more, these mouse passages. And then, you know, he'd have, a lot of times he would adapt things to humans using these chicken eggs. We have similar B cells to birds, and part of our immune system is pretty similar, right?
Yeah, one of the things that I just wanted to the listener to note is Plum Island is literally, I think it's across Connecticut or somewhere where Lyme disease may have found. So it's the county Lyme, and that's how it got its disease. So the disease crops up right in the vicinity of where Traub is doing his research, right? Isn't that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah. So to get back to your question about Eric Traub and Plum Island, now I just had to kind of give a background.
It's
so
a very important. These guys are doing weird things. Yeah.
Yeah. So he got the spirochete in 1939 under his student, Werner Schaefer, and he started to weaponize it. He started to adapt it to different animals to make it so that it can infect pretty much everything. And so he was doing that during the war, and he found in 1939, the same year that he got the spirochete, his mentor taught him how you could use multiple disease agents in one tick to make a very complex disease. So you'd have, and he was learning about Babesia, it's a blood parasite like malaria, rickettsia, which is kind of like typhus, and he also learned about Bartonella, which is a really nasty one. And then, you know, putting all of that in one tick. And so he learned all of that the same year he got that spirochete. And so after the war, he came back over here through what a lot of people are familiar with, Operation Paperclip. And they basically put him at the top of the biological warfare program. And actually, Plum Island was being set up based on, like, he was advising them how to set it up based on his old work at a facility in Germany, which is like the Plum Island of Germany, called Insel Reims. And so he was advising them. He taught them how to set up. You know, you hide it all into animal disease research, and you got to remember, a lot of what he's doing is turning animal diseases into human diseases.
Right. So cross species, make it easier to cross species. And that island we're talking about in Germany is an island in like the North Sea or Baltic Sea or something like that. So it's like an isolated place too.
Yep, northern tip of Germany, and so he was working at Plum Island. I have the documents that say he was working at Plum Island. I have the congressional hearing where they're talking about setting up a foot and mouth disease lab, and they actually made a reference to him, and they were planning on putting him there the entire time. And I show that in my book. And so, you know, because there are some articles out there that try to debunk the claims, like, we don't know of any connection Eric Traub had to Plum Island. Well, I have him working there. He was working there the whole time. And he was meeting with all of the USDA people. And now, so he was over there, and he was
incredible stuff. Well, yeah. One of the things is that for people who don't understand the Lyme disease, these people who are in your community, they're always called crazy, or you have like anxiety disorder, or you're depressed, or they just never could figure it out. It's because you have multiple disease and immunity tolerance. It's like, so the doctors have no idea because they don't know this bioweapons background and all of the deception that's involved in it. Nobody would ever tell the truth. Like, oh, we're actually trying to depopulate the world, or like give, like, it's a horrible thing. We're going to ruin your life through making you unhealthy your whole life.
Yeah. And what he did on Plum Island was they had these things. He was advising them how to run the biological warfare program. He was very important. He was very high up. He was telling them how to run the biological warfare program, and he got them doing something called simulant tests. Simulant tests, you may have heard, they spray bacteria out over a populated area, and it's supposed to be harmless, and then people started dying. There was a guy in San Francisco who died. Well,
they did it with a freaking U-boat or a submarine, and made a cloud and didn't tell anybody. It came out later.
Right.
You don't even know what the other ones were covered up either. So
and then what he did was a different kind of simulant test with ticks and insects, where you'd say, oh, we infect it with a harmless bacteria, just going to cause a rash, and that'll help us track it, because that's what the Nazis did. And so he started releasing them en masse, and he was traveling from, Plum Island. He would go down to Colombia in Central America, back and forth. And I noted that he actually would go down in parallel with the bird migration. So they had this like bird program, and, releasing birds with ticks on them. And so that happened. And what I show is there is a 1953 USDA conference where they admit that basically bioweapons have been released, and we don't know what to do. And they named, and what is so important about that conference is that they talked about Borrelia anserina, the bird strain of Lyme disease, being used as a bioweapon. That's the only place I have ever found them even reference that as, in relation to biological weapons work. And that was the Lyme disease spirochete, because he used that, and it became Borrelia burgdorferi, which is Lyme disease, after he had weaponized it more. And so there was but he weaponized it first over in Germany. So there were strains out in Germany, like earlier strains, like he would keep updating it, make it more nasty. But there were earlier strains that were going around in Germany, because he was doing all this work over in Germany first. And that's why it's interesting, because Lyme disease just seems to follow everywhere Eric Traub goes. And it's really key that I have that the ticks that spread Lyme disease, the black-legged tick, they had no human diseases all the way up to 1951. They're saying these ticks have no human diseases, right? And then in 1958, I have a newspaper article where they're saying it's a serious transmitter of human disease, right? And Polly Murray, she wrote a book called The Widening Circle. She was like one of the first original Lyme cases in Lyme, Connecticut. She said she got sick in, I think it was the summer of 1956, or it was either 55 or 56, but it was early. And that's what I'm saying is it didn't start in 1975. A lot of people have that wrong. That was just the year that they acknowledged that it existed, right? Because even in Polly Murray's book, someone in the forward said, yeah, she's been sick for 20 years.
Wow, crazy. That's Lab 257, right?
Yeah. Lab 257, it talks about that. That book was specifically about Plum Island. He mentions Eric Traub in the beginning, and his source was actually John Loftus, the one who wrote the introduction to my book. And I got involved with him because he's the first one who made the statement that Lyme disease was connected to biological warfare work in his book, America's Nazi Secret. Well, actually, back then it was called The Belarus Secret, 1982. He said that Lyme disease was being spread because of an accident at Plum Island where they were releasing, and he said that it was being spread by ticks. And he said that before they even acknowledged that it was being spread by ticks. And then the next year, they said, yeah, it's being spread by ticks, but those tests never happened, and they try to ridicule anyone who talks about it.
And they gaslight everybody about this stuff. I mean, it's incredible. It even goes up to today, Fauci and all these other characters and what they're doing.
And I show like it's a global thing, right? There's different countries involved, but basically, I noted there is kind of like that same, globalism group, right? And so British intelligence.
Is it fair to say there's a community, like a bioweapons community?
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I just noted that it was like, because I'm not trying to say it's all just, the Russian biological weapons program. They were important because the early days in the 1918 influenza, where they thought Britain was attacking them with it. So they were like, we got to go all out into biological weapons. And we have, like we have Jonas. And what I noted that a lot of the people in the public health system, in our system, were like really pro-Soviet, right? And Jonas Salk, the guy who made the polio vaccine, it's weird because he got an FBI investigation and he was connected to several communist front groups, but yet he was still cleared to advise the U.S. government. And then what happened with his vaccine after, you had the Cutter incident, and then you had the SV40 problem, and then Albert Sabin comes in. Albert Sabin started working on oral polio vaccine. Now get this. The FBI cleared him to team up with this guy, MP Chumakov, he was like the top Soviet bioweaponeer. He was involved in experimenting with spreading tick-borne diseases over in Siberia, and starting in like 1937. And they were testing it on the Muslims and Mongolians. But he teams up with Albert Sabin to make the old polio vaccine. And so it's crazy. It's crazy. And he's all cozy with their bioweaponeers and everything. And so he starts going over there, and these people are also at the same time, they're making, nasty bioweapons to use against us. And it's like,
it's weird. It's weird too, because like the same thing with Fauci, who externally, he is a health practitioner. He knows a lot about bioweapons, and he's been to Fort Detrick.
Yeah, absolutely. And all of these people know all about this immune tolerance phenomenon.
Yeah, they do.
And I published an article. I'm trying to start a little nonprofit called the Biosecurity Ethics and Immune Tolerance Awareness Initiative to show people. I had this excellent article showing that, these public health officials are absolutely aware of this.
Yes.
And not only are they aware of it, they're trying to induce it with the latest jab.
It's really scary. That's why this story is so important. It just shows the lack of ethics and like malevolence and the cross fertilization. Like, why would you let this guy be involved in health decisions? Like, there's something darker going on. We talked about the population. Go ahead.
My fault. Sorry. One of the things that is very important about Eric Traub's work is he discovered. So this immune tolerance, what happens is you get this nasty infection, right? But you have no antibodies. You have no antibodies to it, right? And you don't see the excessive inflammation because it's so immunosuppressive. And so he basically figured out the mechanics of this and how he can make these stealth diseases that wouldn't be picked up, because all we're doing is we're testing people for antibodies to things, right? And this immune tolerance shows that this is absolutely insufficient. We basically have been ignoring one half of the spectrum of disease. You think of it like this. You have acute disease, heavy inflammation, heavy immune response, and you have the polar opposite, immunosuppression, right? And you get these slow chronic diseases. And they're basically ignoring that. And it has a lot to do with all of the bioweapons work and stuff. And Eric Traub had discovered it. But what they did, they gave the Nobel Prize for immune tolerance to these two guys who didn't work together, and they were never nominated together by anybody. And it was given to them in error. Peter Medawar and Francis McFarlane Burnett. And so they made it about organ transplant recipients, because this happens also when they try to give people new organs, and it's probably something infectious like antigens in the organs, and it just kind of like shuts the it makes the immune system go haywire. Well, they made it about organ transplant recipients, getting that and totally ignored the immune tolerance to antigens, because what would that have done is, excuse me, that would have flipped vaccine science like on its head, because basically they're just ignoring this whole side of immunology, and what they would show if they were acknowledging, and they were having conferences in the 1970s, like immune tolerance to microbial antigens. They were very aware of it. And then in 2012, I saw a paper where they're actually saying we should use this as a form of immunity. There was a paper called Disease Tolerance as a Defense Strategy. It was funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, right? And so that really tipped me off and said, "Oh, that's exactly what they're doing." And I saw that the latest jab, the spike proteins, hit the same receptors that bring on this immune tolerance condition. And so I think everybody has to be aware of this condition. And that I had this Eric Traub timeline I put together that's just brilliant. And that really goes through, shows you a lot of the stuff that happened. And so the book is just, there's so much in the book that sometimes it's just like some people might have to read it several times. And there are some people that find it absolutely just brilliant, that they spend time looking into it, because I mean, even for myself,
well, you cited on every chapter you're doing your end notes.
Yeah,
and it's clear
absolutely.
You spent time reading all of these scientific documents.
Yeah, and so everything I say, I link to a citation, and I only used like official sources of information, because you want to look at it like convincing people who want to say you're a conspiracy theorist. Well, I have all of these documents, government documents, scientific papers, journals, everything. And it's laid out very straightforward. And, I explain I explain how it's very hidden, esoteric. The way they wage these wars too is usually through sabotage. They'll have spies on the other side or things like that in the public health system. That's why I said, having Albert Sabin team up with this MP Chumakov guy is absolutely insane to me. Now, get this. MP Chumakov's son, Konstantin Chumakov, approved the COVID jab.
Wow.
He was running vaccine safety and review at the FDA when that was released.
Wow. Yeah. That blows my mind. Like literally, it's crazy. Because I did so much work. I did so much work on COVID. I don't know if you know this, but I did 47 episodes titled Bioweapons Blues, because I knew it was a bioweapon in it. It wasn't, they were doing something. It was not a vaccine or.
The jab. The jab is it brings on that immune tolerance, and it looks like that's what they were trying to do. They're saying, well, and that's why, remember how they were saying it's not going to stop infections. It's going to prevent severe disease. We're going to suppress your immune system, to try to prevent severe disease. But they all know about immune tolerance, and they would know that if they did that, you're going to have this cascade of chronic disease, neuropsychiatric disorders, neurological disorders, and you're going to see cancer skyrocket. And that's exactly what we're seeing. I mean, I've known people, and there were also a lot of deaths too that occurred. I mean, that spike protein is just absolutely nasty.
Savage, yeah.
Yeah. It just ravages the body.
Yeah.
And so
McCullough said there's 500,000 dead. So 500,000 dead in America alone.
Yeah, I would believe it. And it goes completely under the radar. I mean,
it's part of that esoteric, sub rosa sabotage. That's just like they did it. And they're gaslighting the crap out of people too. It's crazy.
I know a couple of people who dropped dead after that jab, and then I know also people that got the cancer stuff,
strokes, heart attacks, prior healthy people, young people,
Mm-hmm.
Like they really rolled it out, and Trump's not doing anything about it, which should give pause to all the MAGA people out there. But that's a whole nother story, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it's like this thing is ravaging our country. And basically what the sleeper agent does is it shows you the history of how this all came to be, like how these kinds of weapons all came to be, because Eric Chop is kind of like the godfather of stealth bioweapons. He discovered the condition itself that causes these slow chronic diseases, and he worked on that. And he took, like, I'm going to turn animal diseases to human diseases. He did that, and but now today, so many people are sick. There's so many people I know that get sick,
Chronic illness,
and it's a constant job just to try to feel normal. So it's like people are so worn out, and it's brutal. And so I show people.
I think that Robert F. Kennedy said, at least in California, autism is 1 in 12 or something.
Yeah, I just saw that too. It went way up, and I actually was saying that. I told John Loftus that early on, before they even rolled it out. I said, this is going to cause, so many problems, because I know all about this antigen and the spike protein, what's in that antigen. It's the same thing that Eric Chop was using to weaponize his agents, like his biological weapons. And so it's a nasty lipid, or a lipoprotein, you could call it. And it throws the immune system into disarray. And so
there is kind of a good news, just to give people total doom. I've heard good responses of fasting, getting sun, vitamin C, vitamin D, ivermectin, which is becoming over the counter now. So you don't have to passively, try to get sick. I've heard ivermectin's good for Lyme disease too. Have you heard that?
And I'm a really big, I think fasting has a lot of potential. Like that's something that is, you don't have to spend anything on, right? And certainly, and I kind of see it as each person has to take this personal journey into getting better, because I've seen people, blow through life savings to like these doctors charging, way up, and then they're still as sick as everybody else in the end. And it's like, well, that's not really that fair, like take all of the money. So I've seen a lot of people, burn through money. I didn't go that route. I was like, I'm not going to go this route. I just kind of taken like a very minimalist approach. I just try to eat right. Right. I try to eat well, and fasting. I do these fasts. That's something I do, the intermittent fasting too. And actually, Eric Chop had a study that showed that the mice lived longer by eating less, like, having less food all the time, like just feeding them like once a day, actually showed that. So there's all sorts of stuff, but I just kind of feel like, and there's another thing that I'm doing right now from my buddy John Scott Perez. It's called Allison V. It's made from garlic. I actually have it right here. It's made from garlic, but the problem with trying to take it in orally is that it's not very bioavailable. So he made this. He had a patent about it, and you have to kind of like vaporize it and inhale it, and it goes to the bloodstream really quick. And he's got a patent about it, and the patent is like, so this Allison V stuff, this disintegrates those spike proteins and stuff. So I'm doing that too. And I love BMX biking. I get exercise every day, getting out, getting sunlight. That's like a really important thing. Just getting out.
Do you feel like you've cured your Lyme disease?
I wouldn't say I've cured it. I just kind of like adapted to the point where it's, I do have a lot more energy these days. I'm not as sick as I used to be. And that's usually what happens. A lot of people they get really sick for like a number of years, and then it kind of like,
tapers off.
Lessen, yeah. And so I don't know. I mean, I'm just trying to show people basically.
But the history also is really interesting too, because these guys were doing bioweapon stuff, like tricks and tricking each other, and they're paranoid before.
So there's like false flag operations that I talked about.
Poisoning horses, People
Yep.
trying to get other people blamed. The British intelligence is doing naughty stuff. So
absolutely, and it's just it is a really wild story because there's like all this stuff happening under the surface that people aren't even aware of. And John Loftus said in the introduction, he said, a third of modern history is classified. All of this stuff is very classified because this was kind of like the war that people chose to use because, nuclear weapons is just a one-way street to total annihilation. And I think people are at least a little smart enough to realize that's not really a viable thing. So what they do is they kind of use they go to biological warfare, and these stealth diseases and stuff. And yeah, I mean, it's crazy because to know that all of these public health system people know about this, well, only the top officials, I would say. I would say most of the public health system are totally unaware. Like they're just going along with it, right? And, like I would say that they're good people, but at the same time, I'm like, I would rather just say they're neutral people because if you're, good people have to actually be doing something about this. You know what I mean?
They're just taking orders. A lot of those guys couldn't be different than like somebody at a cafeteria just putting food on a plate.
Absolutely.
At lunch, they're just like, okay, next bloop. That's all I do. And I pick
but
up
then
the check.
when you have people like Anthony Fauci, gunning this COVID vaccine, he knew that was going to cause immune tolerance. They knew that, and they lied to the people. They lied and told them this fairy tale of immunology. First, they're trying to say, "Oh, it stops infections," and then obviously they had to. Well, it's not going to stop infections. It's going to lessen severe disease. And how would they do that? With immunosuppression.
Yeah, no, he knew. He lied. He lied in like a public forum. He already should have been arrested because the only reason he's not arrested is the people around the country are stupid and don't read. Because if they read about him and what he's done, he lied about the whole zoonotic change. He said, "Oh, we've traced it through, and we have a paper. I don't remember who the freaking person who wrote it. He was the one who wrote it. That's the whole thing. It's like he knows how to play the game. He knows how to do the propaganda. He did it right in front of Trump, and Trump didn't even know. So it's like,
yep." And he was also partially I think he may have been partially involved in the Lymerix vaccine. I can't remember, but he was big in the AIDS vaccine.
He's been there for 40 years, Adam. He's been in power for 40 years.
Yeah, and so this guy also, like that the Lyme disease vaccine and the HIV vaccine use that same lipoprotein antigen that I talk about. That's the great imitator antigen that I talk about. And it's always really nasty. And it's just crazy that they decided to roll that out en masse. And because someone did send me a paper about, there was a guy from Canada talking about how they had this secret depopulation agenda. And, at first you'd think that's kind of far-fetched. But when I started to read it, I was like, man, this lines up exactly with how I have it. I mean, with Jonas Salk, I talked about him in the end of the book. He wrote this book called Survival of the Wisest, where he's talking about, the population's too big. And he said this, medical and scientific advances that keep life going for people is a threat to humanity because of overpopulation.
Right. Yeah,
so
they all have that view.
I mean, it's crazy. And then you have that virus that was infecting, that SV40, and there were others. And it's just like, yeah, I mean, this is information that can save your life, really. I mean,
you won't trust the medical establishment if you read books like this. You'll just be like, what do you guys know? What's really going on? I mean, I've done a lot of different shows with a lot of different people on COVID, and it's just like,
yeah,
I trust a crack dealer more than I trust your average doctor. I'm not exaggerating.
Right. Absolutely. It's really crazy. I mean, the public health system, by ignoring this whole spectrum of disease, they become dangerous because, you have all these problems and they're not even seeing any of it. And then they're like, oh, get a flu vaccine, get this vaccine, get this vaccine. And now to know that they have, what is it, like something like 80 something vaccines for children before they reach their adult life. And I think it was even at the age of 6 or something. That was like the schedule. That's going to cripple our country.
Yeah,
I mean, the human's not designed to just be injected with these things, and they just think like, the immune system's indestructible. It's not. Like you can wear it out, and it's just really wild to me because I just can't believe it's like so.
There has
brazen.
there has to be something sinister and malevolent behind it. It doesn't make sense just accidental. They want to kill people. I think they want to
I
kill
agree
people.
with you.
Yeah.
There was a like, it was called The Subversion of Medicine and Public Health by International Security Prerogatives by Kellen Galilei. And I had read through this, and he's talking about how they had this hidden agenda of depopulation. And it was the way he was talking about it was like, this lines up perfectly with what I have. And I think I think they really do,
I think you're absolutely right. You can tell by their actions. They may not. They actually do say it. Like if you go to the, what is it? What's that? Those big rock formations that they had in Georgia, the Guidestones or whatever.
Oh, the Georgia Guidestones
and getting people down. I mean, they've made statements, the Deagle stuff about depopulating, but whether it's real or not is another question. But
yeah,
I mean, I think King Charles III was behind the Great Reset, which coincided with the COVID rollout globally. I mean, it's an intense form of warfare. It's a new form of warfare. It's off the charts. Biological warfare through deception, gaslighting, and full-on 10th level G propaganda globally. Incredible.
Yeah, it's wild. And
we lived through an incredible event. And anybody who has Lyme disease has living through biological warfare, whether it's intentional or not. They don't know it. Yeah. And there's other things. I mean, we can go Morgellons. I don't know if you study Morgellons and like there's other things that they brought out, but they don't tell you. And you say that in your book too. Like they're releasing other things on an unsuspecting public. They have the capacity to do that.
I had something about Morgellons before. See, I had originally the book was like 1,000 pages, right? And I was like, okay, this I gotta, turn this into something more digestible. But I had something on Morgellons, and I found it to be a biotechnology that they were releasing, kind of like these simulant tests, and it was something DARPA was involved, and it was something that would, they spread it in the environment, and it would, like rainwater, it would absorb into your skin, bones, tendons, all of your tissues and stuff. Like these were actually in the DARPA documents. Wow. And so I was like, wow. And I started to find like these papers, these scientific journals about these replicating nanowires, and it was just like, wow, they're really losing it. And it's getting so out of control that it's like they just think the world's a big lab. Like they just do whatever they want. And I'm just
they're mad scientists and we're their lab rats. And I think that's accurate. I think that's an accurate metaphor. So you look at history and what the Nazis did and other people, and the sad truth is a lot of Americans, there was biological warfare against natives here, and smallpox was spread around because the immunity wasn't there. So like there's huge issues in human civilization about immunity and poison blankets and things like that. It's kind of sad.
Yeah, truth. And I have George Washington on record in the book quoted saying that British are using smallpox as a weapon against us. So this is something going on as far back as 1776.
And I think that George Washington had smallpox. Like he was known, like an accurate picture of him is his face had the pock marks of somebody with smallpox.
Oh yeah.
So, yeah. So we get this kind of deified view of Washington. He was a little bit more of a rugged kind of frontier guy than people, talk about today. But anyway, that's a really interesting. I think that's one of the interesting aspects of your book. Like I stated earlier, is the historical. You build it up to the present. Like this is what's happened in the past. So. People are thinking that. Yeah. So, is there anything? We're at the 45-minute mark. There's a lot more in your book. I think we even just covered half of this. Is there anything you'd like to add or anything I missed before we wrap it up?
Oh, not really. I mean, just, want to try to give all the people out there that are sick and can't figure out what's wrong with them. You got to read this book, and then you'll kind of see, like, so many people all have the classic symptoms of immune tolerance, and it has this pattern where it gets better, gets worse, get better, gets worse, and it's kind of up and down. That's like one of the hallmarks of immune tolerance, and so. This book is very well documented, and I'm really just trying to raise awareness, and I don't know if I can like send you a link, but I
Sure.
want to try to get this organization going to try to do something about this whole them ignoring immune tolerance, because by doing that, the science of chronic disease started working backwards. So it basically, immune tolerance is the science of chronic disease. For most chronic diseases anyway, because it's usually immune deficiency that keeps you sick. Your immune system just can't. Yeah, Epstein-Barr virus, and that's one of the things I have. That Epstein-Barr virus and the human herpes virus 6, which is a encephalitis kind of one of the viruses that is like really so combination of Epstein-Barr and HHV6. That's what I have. And I also have mycoplasma. That was just what they could find. But I had to go to a separate doctor to get a different test for them to show me that. Because
What was the test that you took to find out about that? What was the name?
It was called, I think it was IGX. They used IGX rather than IgM or something. I'm not really so I got that. It was some years ago, and it showed EBV, HHV6, Lyme disease, mycoplasma, and there's probably like some of the other co-infections. They just didn't pick it up. So this is kind of like the book that unravels the science of chronic disease and how it was used in the biological weapons race, and how now they're trying to promote it as a form of immunity, basically within themselves. They don't tell the public that this is what we're doing. They give them this fairy tale of immunology. And so I'm trying to show them this is what's going on. And so I'm writing a second book, and that's going to try to focus on the science of it itself, because I want to show people like all of these vaccines that people are taking are also contributing to it and burning out the immune system, because it has similar antigens, like meningococcus, that has like a very similar antigen, and it all brings this on. I mean, I know people who got like a DTaP and got really chronically ill afterwards. It's happening in mass, but they're never picked up in the data. It's never picked up and shown back in the data. We're just all being ignored because they don't see immune tolerance and that spectrum as a disease at all, because it doesn't register on their tests. But they're using the wrong tests it'd be like, giving somebody a drug test to see if they have exposure to asbestos, right? It's like,
right.
That's the wrong
Ridiculous.
test. You're not going to see anything. So that's kind of the analogy I use. And it's like, the more people can know about this, the better.
They can't understand how sinister some of their public officials are too. I think that it's strange credulity that somebody would be that malevolent. That's why, and to a certain extent, Fauci's still out there. Yeah,
that's how I felt when I was like, oh my God, because they definitely know that when you induce that immune tolerance, it brings on that dark triad that I talked about, and that's like, you have to that's like, it's so well known that's what happens. So it's just, that's why I said,
he knows something. That's why he's friends with Gates. That's the connection, is this depopulation. And it's probably why he's been at his job, is because he's a front for all of those foundational interests and old family money and aristocratic money who hate the peasants. They've always been worried about the peasants. That's what the peasants never get, is that they're just trying to get through their lives and pay rent and have a little bit of fun. But they never get that these elites treat them with contempt and are kind of secretly afraid. They get jealous too if they have a little bit more shine to them, and so they're always trying to like keep them, oppress them, and keep them down. in all kinds of psychological. I think the control of the peasants was always psychological warfare, and if
there's
not,
just so much. I mean, it's crazy. It's just like we're being hit from every angle.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow. So I basically just tried to focus on this one thing. Now there's also chemical warfare going on too. Like, and you can kind of apply the same stuff that I talk about in Sleeper Agent to the chemical warfare side too, because they also use chemicals to induce these flow diseases as well. Like it's all synergistic. So, like a lot of the people at the FDA clearing all of the stuff they put in foods, that are actually harmful. And
they know it.
Yeah,
it's part of the Depop agenda. It's really dark.
Yes, it is.
A lot of people know. I mean, what's really scary too, and I've come to the conclusion, like, I'm actually less afraid of a vampire or a werewolf than the monsters who can literally straight face lie to you about things that will cause you harm. Those are really the most dangerous people, like Fauci or Gates, who know secretly that they're killing off kids and making families miserable. I know a family who has somebody with autism and needs care 24/7, and it's destroyed their family. They're not a happy family.
Yeah.
And
that's what I'm saying is, so that's one area that I'm really trying to focus on is the vaccine connection, because that's like huge. I mean, these kids are being destroyed.
Yeah. Myelitis, it takes away your brain. I mean, that's how evil Fauci and Gates and these people around it. They are and one of the things that would shock people, and you probably might not be shocked, but you could probably do a statistical analysis of like rich people, friends of Gates, whose kids have these debilitating disease or immune tolerance or autism, and then look at everybody else, and you'll find that all those rich people, none of their kids have autism, because they know they're part of.
They do.
Thing. Yeah,
they know. And they used to even call this post-vaccinal encephalomyelitis. That was the term they used for neurological diseases of all kinds following vaccination, and they were using that term for a while, but then they started to kind of. What they did was they just changed all the language, made autism this, specific entity, and then as time goes on, they're like, well, it's actually a vast spectrum, and so it's basically just general destruction of the brain and the neurotropic effect that I talk about. So you would expect that with something like immune tolerance. When you induce that, that's expected. And especially I know the MMR is very notorious for it, because when they induce this immune tolerance and you're using a live virus, it regains itself, goes to the brain, and starts destroying it. And there was an excellent paper about it, not by good people, but it was called Altered Virulence of Vaccine Strains of Measles After Prolonged Replication in Human Tissue, showing that when people are vaxxed with this and they are immunosuppressed, it's dangerous.
It just causes cascading problems just forever.
Yes.
And early dark triad. Dark triad, early death. And then they just say, oh, you got cancer. They don't say, oh, by the way, we suppressed your immunity and we know what the outcome is going to be. I mean, it's just so dark. What they did over COVID was really a World War III event. And people need to see it in that way. They've just been mind controlled to think something else is going on, but it's really a horror show.
It is. Yeah,
Adam, It's great to talk with you. I love talking with you. You're so knowledgeable, because I've done my own homework, so I kind of know the COVID situation. I didn't know as much about Lyme disease, so I'm glad that I've read up on this.
Well, it's got that same antigen, so it's like that antigen was like their focus. They use that nasty spike protein, and so it's connected to this. That's why people should get familiar with that in relation to COVID, because it's like it's.
If they would have known this before they rolled out the whole coronavirus, they would have said, well, I'm really suspicious of something that's going to produce a spike protein in my body, because that's what this guy did, right? Does that make sense? I think so.
Yeah.
Adam Finnegan, where can people find your book?
Yeah, you can find me at thesleeperagent.com. Just hit the thesleeperagent.com. And from there, you can find, you can find videos, the blog. You can buy the book at the store. And I've got a press release, and I've got that excellent Eric Traub timeline that's something that everyone will find very interesting. And I link to a lot of documents. I'm working on getting all of his German papers into English and put on that site too, because I collected his entire career of published work and a lot of his colleagues. So it was immense work that I did.
Wow, those Germans kept tons of records too, because they could have reams of records. But it's interesting. Like Trobes has to be put in the same group as like Werner von Braun and Blom, who also ended up working on MK Ultra, who was also a biowarfare guy who came to the U.S. And they're like walking around the U.S. and Galen and all these other characters. Like it's like some freaking dark people, man. Really dark, not good people who were somehow allowed.
And I think it was kind of like this, the leftover Nazis kind of merged with the Soviets and British intelligence kind of that. Well, I always thought the Soviet Union was kind of like almost like a creation of British intelligence and stuff, but I don't know. But it was crazy because, it's just that there's a lot there in the sleeper agent people will find very interesting.
Some of these guys, I think that Traub worked under Himmler to a certain extent, right? Like I don't know if
he was vice president at that Insel Reims. He was basically running Insel Reims. He was coordinating with Blom, and Blom coordinated with Himmler. So he wasn't really. He was just kind of managing it. He wasn't even really at the island, Blom. But he was coordinating with them, to Himmler and stuff. So, and they created these. They did some really nasty stuff, and then the Soviets took over that facility, and so it just seemed like they merged with them. And it was like, oh, let's destroy America or something, But I think
that, like the poisoning is destroying us from within, and like you said, it's the intent to cause. Yeah. Long-term harm. It's like most people wouldn't think about that, but these bioweapons guys are thinking that, and that's the whole thing. They're thinking, how can I cause long-term debility?
Eric Traub was kind of like what you call an evil genius. He was like a lot smarter than the other guys for some reason. He just had a knack for this, and he just went all out, and he was kind of like the all-star. That's why every country wanted to employ him, and they did at one point. So this Eric Traub is a key to understanding the entire biological warfare game.
Wow.
Definitely.
Amazing.
Especially with COVID. With COVID, it's kind of like the icing on the cake.
Right. This is the predicate to that. That's the predicate.
Absolutely.
Again, the author is Adam Finnegan, and the title of the book is The Sleeper Agent, The Story and Science of the Great Imitator Antigens of Biological Warfare. I will put a link to his website in the show notes, and also a link to this foundation or this group that he's setting up to, if he sends me that link too.
Yeah, that would be great.
And
you want me to send it right now?
Yeah, you can email it to me. It's fine. And if you go to his website, you can see his social media, X, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and follow him. And there's, if you haven't brushed up on the stuff, it's really important that you do. You need to know those things because you wouldn't trust these so-called health administrators at all if you know like what they're really up to. There's two faces. They have two faces. The interesting thing about your book and the theme in the book is this deception that they're disguised in like normal sounding buildings. And you could literally, it's not going to be some creepy building that says we're trying to design something that's going to kill a quarter of the population. It's going to be like Health and Human Services are going to say something like that. So
it's all hidden under benign research and treatments and vaccines and stuff. And they say that in the book, and I show people, the quotes where they're saying that.
Yeah, that's it's part of the esoteric element. There's no question about it. Adam, great talking with you. Thanks for your time. Stay there.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure.